and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and I'm joined, as always, by an absolutely traumatized Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt? It's okay. It's all going to be okay. They're friends. It's good to have friends.
Good to have friends.
This week on the show, the newest MCU film is here, and we actually, for maybe the first time, went out and watched it right when it came out. We're here to talk all about James Gunn's final entry into the Guardians of the Galaxy cinematic universe. We're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Yep, last superhero film that James Gunn will ever make.
Yep, he's done. He hung up his cape
Yep.
to pick up another cape.
A darker colored cape. Darker and grittier cape.
Well, we'll see about that.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
Like we always do with these episodes on movies that just came out, we will have a brief non-spoiler section at the very beginning if you're just curious what our, high-level, unspecific thoughts on this movie were. And then we will, of course, get into full spoilers as we discuss the things that we did and did not like about this movie. And then I thought we'd finish it up. I have a recommendation for a new show for you that I thought you would find delightful, and I thought our audience would as well. So we're going to do that, and that'll be the episode.
Sounds fun.
All right, let's get into James Gunn's Guardian of the Galaxy Volume 3.
I'm gonna tell you something. I'm Star-Lord. I formed the Guardians. Met a girl, fell in love. That girl died, but then she came back. Came back a total dick.
Oh, please. He left out some important information, but that is the gist of it.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
Still reeling from the loss of Gamora, Peter Quill rallies his team to defend the universe and one of their own, a mission that could mean the end of the Guardians, if not successful.
This movie was written and directed by James Gunn. It stars Chris Pratt, Bradley Cooper, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, Zoe Saldana. Who did I leave off there, Matt? There's a whole lot of people here.
There are probably some cameos in there that I didn't even notice because they were CGI.
Sylvester Stallone's in here.
Oh yeah.
Judy Greer is the voice of the pig monster.
That's just a fact that I will now have in my brain. There you go.
Will Poulter's in here. He plays Adam Warlock. Of course, Vin Diesel. Our boy Groot.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, tell me what you thought. Remember, this is our non-spoiler section. What did you think of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
I mostly loved it. I think I may have loved it. I was thinking that I loved it. It was a little too long. Other than that, I loved it. It had a heart. It made me cry like 2 separate times. It was fun. It was imaginative. It was visually imaginative in ways that I appreciated greatly, considering how kind of samey and flat a lot of these movies can look. It was funny. And my kids liked it. All 3 of them liked it. They liked it a lot. We talked about it afterward. They enjoyed it. They found it just as moving as I did. And that says a lot, personally. So that's my take. What's yours?
I don't like to be this person. I really don't like to be this person. And I'm in this really weird place with this movie. And I think I'll set this up a little bit, just reminding our listeners that I've kind of been out on the MCU since Endgame, basically. There hasn't been a thing that's come out since Endgame that I really universally loved. I mean, I guess I really did like the Spider-Man movie, but since that was a Sony co-pro, it just feels like something different and apart from the MCU. But other than that, really haven't really loved any of these movies. I still haven't seen the Ant-Man movie, but I don't expect to really fall in love with that one either. And so perhaps you could say that I put a lot of pressure on this movie going into it, that I kind of said to myself and said to you, I remember walking into the theater and texting you, it was like, here we go, time to find out if I'm still into this MCU thing or not. And that's a lot of pressure to put on one movie. I agree with just about everything you said. Is that this movie is very fun. It's very visually inventive. It's very emotional. It definitely is a movie that wears its heart on its sleeve, which is kind of what James Gunn does in everything he does. But I did not love it. And there's a lot in this movie, and I think it's too quick and easy to call it overstuffed. I don't think it's that there's too much in the movie. I think it's that the things in the movie don't cohere and come together in a satisfying way to me. There's a lot of characters, there's a lot of plots going on, and a lot of character arcs going on, and they don't ever like join together in a satisfying way for me. It just feels like a lot of disparate ideas just buzzing around in a movie. And they're fun ideas. There's so many fun ideas here. And the frustrating part about this movie to me is I really look at it as something that I should love. Like I listen to what you just said, and I've been reading what other people have said, and like, oh, this is a movie that is kind of carved out of the MCU. This is not something like I guess it's no spoilers, but we don't like meet a character midway through this movie that's gonna like be a new central Marvel character that we have to go through their whole origin story to set up their movie. Like that doesn't happen in this movie. This is just about the Guardians. And I love that. And also I love that it's a character focused story, and I love that it's doing something inventive and new with locations and this weird cosmic stuff that the original Guardians kind of defined. But also I find it really exhausting.
Yeah. I think we can talk about the stuff that didn't work for us without necessarily like dragging the movie and saying that it was, bad. Because
Yeah.
because there's stuff that annoyed me too. Like
Well, do we want
I
to hold off on do we want to
y-
ring our spoilers gong, or can you do this without?
I think the the main thing that annoyed me that I can say without spoiling is that it continues this motif of the music,
Mhm.
and I found the music just to be overdone this time. Like I totally get it. I get what he's doing. I understand why. I was just like, okay, I get it. It was too much. It was shoving it. It was like in the other movies, it was like a fun kind of grace note
Mhm.
on a film that worked really well. And in this one, it's like being shoved in your face so many different times. Um, I mean, just to kind of anchor that home, despite the fact that I said my kids liked it, and they really did. They really did. The first thing that happened in like the first 2 minutes of the movie is my oldest leans over to me and she's like, I don't like this. And it's because the song is, first of all, way too loud, and just like I'm going to say it again, like shoving the song in your face. And you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. I think I think I have this problem with music a lot. I just watched this clip from the movie Garden State on Twitter for some reason. and and it's like a scene of a person listening to music, and I'm like, that works for you, Mr. Director, because you know what emotions are supposed to be carried by that pop song, but I don't, because I'm not you. I didn't experience that song the way you did. That's not like you like music doesn't actually work that way. And this is the first one of these three movies where I have felt that way about the music. And the other ones, I feel like the music was there and you could take it or leave it. And I usually was just like, yeah, it's okay, it's a song. But in this one, it made it impossible for you to ignore. This was like, frankly, like the number one thing that annoyed me about the movie. Like out of everything that I love, this is the thing that just had me consistently kept like pushing me back at arm's length, despite me trying to like reach out and hug the movie. The movie's like, nah, we're gonna play Creep for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I with two exceptions, I basically completely agree with that entirely.
Mhm.
I think like it was definitely this novel thing that the first Guardians did, and I don't know if you remember, but James Gunn really pushed for that. He really wanted these needle drops. He wanted to build that first movie around these songs, and Disney fought him on it. They didn't want to let him do it, and he finally won that, and it of course became like the number one selling movie soundtrack of all time. And it feels like they took that and went insane with it in this movie. Like there are four separate instances in this movie in which the Guardians line up and slow-mo walk to some needle drop playing. and it just gets absurd by the end of it. It just
Mhm.
gets absurd. And like, I think part of the movie is acknowledging that absurdity a little bit, but it was just too much for me. It was just way too much. And that's a lot of the movie was just too much for me. Like, there's just, we'll get into it here in a second, but there's so many different things going on, and that music is just a perfect example of it. And the other thing is, in the first two Guardians movies, the soundtrack, the Awesome Mix Volume 1 and then Volume 2, was like integral to our character, right? These are things that his mother gave him. And this is a character that is, especially in the first movie, really still reeling from the loss of his mother. And this is how he holds on to her. And so the music has this emotional, like this direct emotional connection to the characters in the story. Like he's choosing this song for this specific reason, and it means this to him. And at the end of the second movie, our Peter Quill got a Zune, which is a wonderful, funny joke. I actually really enjoy that joke because the fuck is a Zune? Nobody remembers Zunes.
Mhm.
And the Zune had like all this music from all other eras on it, and now that's like James Gunn's excuse to pull music from whatever era he wants, and he just goes insane with it.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work as well. There's too much.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because despite the fact that I really did love this movie, and we're going to talk about all the awesome stuff in a second, like you just said something that explains, I think, like specifically why it doesn't work is that it really messes up the tone. And you said, the movie is aware of the ridiculousness of it, and it's like, yeah, why do we have to do that? Like the movie operates as a good movie without all of these moments where we wink at the camera and say like, "Ah, this is silly, isn't it?" Like that was like that's what was charming about the first Guardians movie to me, really, is that it didn't do that. Like it's a very ridiculous setting and characters. You got the tree guy and the raccoon guy and everything, but it didn't do the cutesy winking at the audience thing. And this one kind of did, and I was like, what? Like, just pull back on the music, it would have been fine. Anyway, that's like my
Yeah.
main it's like my main gripe. And then I guess my other gripe, unfortunately all of my gripes are going to be in the spoiler free part, I guess. My other gripe is that it was too long. Like at like the 2 hour mark, I was like, I love this movie. Me and Scott are going to have a huge argument because nothing was wrong with this movie. It was perfect. And I know that Scott didn't care for it that much, and then it just kept going. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, there's some pacing problems in the end here. Unfortunately, sort of characteristic of Marvel films. And I think I felt that way about Guardians of the Galaxy 2 also, for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I don't remember. It's been a while since I watched Guardians 2, but I don't remember feeling this way about Guardians 2. Maybe if I went and revisited it now, I would feel the exact same way. But this, to me, I think my overall spoiler free comment here is this feels like the weakest of the three films. But I will say, this is absolutely the best movie Marvel has put out since Endgame.
Mhm.
Like despite everything, we're going to get into the details of what I think didn't work and why. I think this is absolutely the best thing they've done since phase whatever ended.
Yeah, I can easily agree with that. I mean, it's the only one that's really made me feel strong emotions and made me feel really invested in the characters. I like Thor: Love and Thunder. I did. I like that movie, but like, man, talk about undermining the tone. Like that's a movie that just kind of kept stiff arming you dramatically when you're trying to like invest in the characters. It's
Yeah.
it's undercutting that, and I kind of get like, I give that one a bit of a pass because like that's like the thing with Thor, is that he's undercutting his own emotional
Mm-hmm.
struggles with humor, and it kind of became a little bit meta, which made it more acceptable.
Yeah.
And I buy that, and I get that and everything, but nonetheless, I think I was distanced from the movie because of that. And this movie just totally drew me in, and worked on me.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that James Gunn has always had going for him is sincerity, and despite that there are more kind of winking at the camera moments in this film than there were in the other Guardians films, I think this is still a very sincere movie. It's a movie,
Mhm.
like I said, that wears its heart on its sleeve. And I think that is Gunn's strength, to do these wonderful character moments that exist in these silly, absurd universes, but can still be sincere and emotional and impactful. I guess my problem, and we'll get into the details of it here in just a sec, my problem was, while I appreciated all of those things were happening, I just didn't feel like it came together in a satisfying way. I think the thing I loved about the first Guardians movie is you have all these disparate people that are all struggling with something similar, and the movie like crescendos to this beautiful moment where it all their various wants and needs come together to be this one thing. And I didn't feel like that this movie executed on that very well at all.
Mm. I'm not sure that I guess it's not so much that I disagree as I didn't feel the lack of that.
Sure.
You were looking for something and it wasn't there, and that disappointed you. And,
Yeah.
and for me, I was just like, well, I got what the movie sort of led me to expect dramatically.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest example of this for me is I didn't cry watching this movie.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely the type of movie that I would think I would. Like the things that were happening, I was like, man, in any other movie I would be weeping right now, and I just wasn't. And that speaks to me that something here is not working for me.
Yeah, I think once we get into spoilers, I'd be interested to maybe try to nail that down or chase that down. Like what exactly the problem was in more specific strokes than what we're doing right now.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do that. And I want to make sure that it as we get into the spoiler section, like I still have plenty of stuff I want to talk about that I think this movie did that was very, very cool, actually, because I do have tons of positive things to say about this movie. But maybe let's spend this first half here just like getting into the stuff that didn't work for me and maybe the why of it.
Sure.
And so, okay, spoilers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 from here on out. That is your official warning. You can't get mad at us anymore. All right. So the first thing I just want to say is your daughter is wrong, and the creep song was one of the two songs that worked like gangbusters on me. This movie starting out playing Creep, that worked. I love that acoustic version of Creep. And the other one that really worked on me was Florence and the Machine, the one that headed up the finale of the movie. I really liked that one.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, look, those are two songs that I love by themselves. Like I love both of those songs. To me, I think it's almost like, okay, like, but actually, I think this is what it is. Like, those are two songs that I have listened to like 100 times each, and I have a strong emotional connection to them. And it's a specific Matt Freeman specific emotional connection to them. So when you play them in Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm not feeling what you want me to feel. I'm feeling my emotions, which are totally different. And I guess that's a risk that you take when you play like a piece of basically popular music in your movie of any kind. But it just so happens that starting the movie with Creep, it's like, oh wow, whatever James Gunn wants me to be feeling right now, I'm just thinking about the time I tried to learn this song and played it with my friends in our quote unquote band in graduate school. And like it totally diverted me and like I'm like not even paying attention to what's happening.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So that's, and I almost think that's just like a general problem with the whole idea of having the needle drops. Once we got past the song though, the Creep in particular was one where I was just like, and also it just was too long. They played almost the entire song.
The one that got me was Beastie Boys' No Sleep Till Brooklyn, because I'm so sick of the Beastie Boys being used in movies. Like I feel like and look, I want those guys to get as much money as possible. Like they're good artists. Like I'm not telling them don't go for it, but stop using Beastie Boys songs in movies, please. Didn't the Super Mario Brothers movie do this as well?
Probably.
Isn't there a Beastie Boys song in there? But and like it's like hour 6 of what the movie it feels like, and like our characters line up in slow motion again, and Peter Quill puts his headphones in his ears again, and it's like, we're gonna do this again. And I was like, oh my god, I'm so sick of this slow motion lineup. Like even like there's a joke in there where Gamora, a joke in a character movie where Gamora like shakes her head and then eventually lines up and joins them, and that's a character moment for her, and I appreciate that. But I was so exhausted by it by then, I just didn't care. And
Yeah.
after that, like, there's one of the coolest action sequences in the whole film, which is that hallway action sequence that I thought was legitimately great. And
It
it's like
was.
this is the conflicting nature of this movie for me.
Yeah, I need to get my head around the idea that movies are just 2.5 hours long now, because I like, this is my actual journey. Was, I'm going to say it again in the spoiler section, but I'm going to be more specific in the spoiler section, is that at about the 2 hour mark, that's roughly when they save Rocket. Or maybe that's when Rocket gets his revenge. One of the two. They come close. No, he doesn't get his revenge. It's when they save Rocket. It's when they save Rocket.
Yeah,
roughly.
That sounds about right.
And I was like, great, the stakes have been resolved. Rocket has been saved. Maybe there's a couple of things that need to happen to kind of clean up, kind of tidy up the edges of this plot, but we're done. We're gonna move into denouement now. And it's like, no, we're just starting the action scene. You thought the destruction of a planet and all of the gunfights up to this point were the action? No. Now we're beginning the part where we have the action, and there's a giant space battle, and there's giant planet-sized ships crashing into each other, and people jumping through space. And I was like, I now have a headache. And I'm also just dramatically disconnected, because we saved Rocket. That was what I cared about. That was everything else is just noise. And that really like the graph of my enjoyment of the movie, which had been just like going up and up and up, just like began slanting downward to the point where I think it actually harmed my overall enjoyment, that they didn't just understand that the movie was dramatically done and they needed to wrap it up,
I'm glad you said this, because this is in essence my central complaint with the movie, which is you have this villain, the High Evolutionary, is this very personal villain for Rocket, the guy that tested on him and created him in a way, who is an absolute monster, total monster. And there's this moment in the film, and this is kind of when I realized, oh, this is why the film's not working for me, because there's this moment where I think it's right when he's defeated, right? Rocket wins, and he says, but I just wanted to make the perfect world, or something. And his response to that is, no, you just wanted to change it, or something.
He says you just hated it the way it was.
You just hated it the way it was.
Yeah.
And this is the way the movie frames this moment and this sequence and that statement. It frames it as some powerful moment of realization and growth for Rocket. Like, that's the way it frames it. And I was sitting here watching this like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything that any of these characters are going through, right? Like, is that what's happening to any of these characters? Is Rocket going through a thing where he doesn't like the world the way it is, and like, is his struggle through this movie like thematically aligned with what the villain's trying to do at all, other than, it's plot aligned, certainly, but thematically aligned? No, not really. What is, like, we get it in the Creep song, we get this little bit of Rocket as he's kind of depressed and thinking about, this family, these friends he had before the Guardians, and he's thinking about that. And so we resolve that arc in him getting revenge on the High Evolutionary. But like, he doesn't really need anything. And this is the same way I feel about all the arcs in this story, which is like, they're emotionally satisfying, but I'm so confused what this has to do with anything. There's multiple beats throughout this movie where Drax, Mantis, and Nebula are like getting in screaming fights with each other. Like, they're just screaming at each other. And then that's resolved at the end by like, Drax, you were never meant to be a destroyer. You were meant to be a dad. And I'm like, that's a great, wonderful, warm characterization. But what the fuck was going on before all that? There's a moment where Mantis calls Drax an idiot, and he like says, "You think I'm an idiot?" And she goes, "No, forget."
Mm-hmm.
And deletes his memory, and we just move on from that moment. And I'm like, what the fuck? What was that? What are you like? This is there's so many beats like this that like I think like on a surface level work emotionally, but like don't make any sense to me. And that's how I felt as I was going through so many of these different beats.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong that they don't work like logically, because I think what that is just the bickering of a family. Like the whole thing with the Guardians is that they're a family, they're a found family, you know, they're a chosen family, and they get on each other's nerves, and some of them don't get along with the others, and they all have their quirks and idiosyncrasies and rough edges that make them difficult to get along with. um and it's not really about the specifics of like Drax is dumb. Are we going to resolve the Drax is dumb plot line? Like that's not really what it is. It's just like you have the kind of oafish guy, and you have to learn to accept him as he is, and that's all it is. Like that, I think it does work on that level. In fact, it's almost, if you look at it this way, I think it's maybe borderline too explained, because Mantis is just like, you only care about like competence and excellence, and like you don't care about people's other positive qualities that they may have. And then shortly after that, Drax, reveals that he knows the language that the children know, which saves the day, right? And it's like, oh, okay, that's the lesson. The lesson is that you should appreciate the things that people like, the positive qualities people have, and not really rag on them too much for their lack of other qualities, and just love everybody for who they are, and etc. Like that's it's kind of just that over and over in a sense, almost.
Yeah. I guess I see that. Like I definitely see that. I just don't know, like I guess, and maybe I'm just getting too caught up in structure here, but like what does that have to do with it's just like, so this is this thing, there's these three people, they're just a bickering family, and they each have like, but nobody in that trilogy of people like wants anything in particular.
Mhm.
Like I think it's like Drax at the end getting to be a father again, like to these kids. I think that's beautiful. I think that's a beautiful culmination of that character. I think it's a great idea. But like, it didn't feel to me like the movie was leading to that moment in any way. It just felt like we were doing all this other stuff, and then that happened. And then we're like, oh, but like, then we have all this other stuff that I didn't feel like was leading to that. And the same with Mantis, leaving at the end and doing that thing. Like, again, that felt like an appropriate finish line for the character, but it didn't feel like this movie was pushing towards that in any real way. And that felt weird to me. I think the only person's arc that really worked on me was Peter's, because like that was kind of the main thrust of the movie, was his relationship with Gamora, and how he was clearly wanting her to be someone that she wasn't, and him learning to get over that, and like, I think, go out on his own and find some other meaning elsewhere, I think was good. But I don't know, I felt so confused. And then like, to tie it back into the whole high evolutionary thing, I just don't feel like the movie did any work to tie any of these plot lines into the main arc of the movie.
I do kind of want to come back to that, and the idea that the high evolutionary is something's going on there that maybe we're both missing, because I can't.
I think that's a fair thing to say. Like, very possible I just missed this whole thing,
because I can't tell you that I've put my finger on it. But before we do that, I want to highlight a specific moment in the film where the movie says to us, "Oh, Rocket was the protagonist of Guardians of the Galaxy the entire time," in almost those words, but not quite.
mm-hmm.
It says that this was your story all along, to Rocket.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of helped me with this movie specifically. Not that I was struggling with it, but it helped me see, like, yeah, Rocket is the protagonist of this movie for sure. Not anybody else.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But by far, right? Like in a big way. And so the lack of sort of cohesion and satisfying resolution for the other characters, I just felt much less bothered by, I think, because I was I was just like, yeah, in this movie, they're all side characters. They're all look like third tier side characters compared to the importance of Rocket's through line.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Quill gets the honor of being a strong secondary character. Everybody else, like, I guess I just don't think of Drax as being a character that I care enough about anyway to really miss his plot getting a resolution. And so any extra sort of satisfaction that I get on Drax is just icing on the cake. It's one way or the other. I'm not missing out, because I mean Drax has always just been a ridiculous comic relief character to me that I'd never cared about Drax for a nanosecond before this movie. so this is the first time I've ever really cared about Drax at all.
Yeah, I guess what I'll say is, like, the thing I love about the first movie so much is that I thought it definitely was the Peter Quill movie, but I think it did a really good job with the rest of the characters to make it feel like an ensemble, to the point where I got something from everyone. And I think the second movie, the reason I like the second movie so much is it did that too. You know, we have the relationship between Gamora and Nebula going on, you know, Drax going off with Mantis and kind of defining their relationship. The conflict between Peter and Rocket was so interesting. And I liked all those things a lot. And I guess, I don't know. I think honestly, I listen to myself talking right now and I'm like, Scott, you're being too hard on this movie. And very possible, certainly possible. But like, even what you said, this is Rocket's movie, and you're 100%. It's Rocket's movie. He's unconscious for 3/4 of it, and
yeah,
and like, I know we're doing his backstory and we're understanding that, and he's an active character in that timeline of the movie. But I mean, you said like the emotional stakes are over when Rocket wakes up. But then that can't be, because then Rocket hasn't actually done anything in the present at all. And I guess the question I have to ask once again is like, what does Rocket want? Like, what does his character want in this movie? Because like, we get this little bit, you know, at the beginning with the creep song that he's forlorn about something and we don't really understand what it is yet. And he obviously doesn't have closure with what happened to him in his past. And so I guess we could argue what he wants here is closure, but it's kind of like closure thrusts itself upon him unless like he actively seeks it out.
Well, I have an answer for your questions, which also neatly ties in the role of the high evolutionary. Although I will agree with you before I say my answer that the movie doesn't dramatize this. It doesn't. It's there to be found if you're looking, but it's not. It didn't really connect for me until I thought about it sitting here. So my answer is Rocket has been running in the same way that Peter has been running. These are two characters that have been running from their past. Rocket has known his entire life that there's this guy, the high evolutionary. He's out there. He's doing unspeakably horrible things. Really quite amazingly evil things. On the scale of evil things that villains have done in the MCU, high evolutionary may be near the top.
Yeah, he wiped out an entire planet.
He wipes out an entire planet of sentient, cute animal beings. And you get the sense that he does this sort of thing all the time. I mean Thanos like had like an end point. You could even never mind. I'm not going to compare Thanos.
Here goes Matt defending Thanos.
Yeah, that got to do at least one of those every episode. No, but like, he's super super awful, and Rocket knew he was out there, and it was on some level hiding from him or running from him, running from his past, and so the closure that Rocket needed was to stop this evil man from doing these things that he's doing. Because there was, there's no saving, like there's no one left to save. All of his friends are dead. At best, he saves some baby raccoons, but that's not the closure that he needs, because he just blew up a planet. He just blew up a planet full of poor animal creatures. The closure is you got to stop this guy so we can never do this again. And we I guess we get that, although he doesn't kill him, which I'm like, you should have just killed him, because if you don't kill him, then he's going to just keep doing stuff like this. Okay, so now I want to unless you have something specific to say, I'm going to segue from that directly into the thematic um, um, dialectic. Is that the right word?
Sure.
So the High Evolutionary is the antithesis to the Guardians, because rather than, finding people with all their finding and embracing people with all their imperfections and saying, you are my family and I love you, even though I think you're an idiot, I love you. He loves no one and nothing, and he's trying to make something that is in his own mind worthy of his love, and rejecting everything that falls short. Interestingly, I just parenthetically, I love that, like, Rocket is like his greatest creation in a sense.
Hmm.
And his reaction to Rocket's existence is to, like, become shriekingly insane and be like, what's so special about you? Like, he's like jealous of him, right?
Yeah.
It's like, even when he sort of succeeds, he can't accept it or appreciate it in any way.
Yeah, I mean, this is one through line I really like from all the Guardians movies, is that I think all the Guardians films are about bad dads in a way.
Mhm.
Obviously Thanos for Gamora and Nebula, obviously Peter had ego, and then this is Rocket's bad dad, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it is such a bad parent moment, because like a true good parent, like I know what you want and what I want for my kids is I want them to be better than me, right? I want
Mhm.
them to be more successful than me. I want them to be, to just surpass me in every possible way. That, as a parent, is what I want for my kids. And this guy can't stand that one of his creations actually did that, right? He can't stand that his creation figured something out that he didn't. I think the thing that bothers me about that is I don't think I needed a specific part of that plotline resolved, but I think it would be this really interesting thematic answer of like what, like this ongoing question that is nagging at him, like what makes you so special? How come you're able to figure this thing out and nobody else is? Like, why? Like, the why of that is something that the movie just leaves completely unresolved. And I'm not saying it's like, well, it's because like I don't need a. I think it would be cool if the movie made it a little more explicit that it might be he's special because of his family and because of his relationships, and like, like that friendship that he formed with those other animals in the cages, like, made him something that was beyond what he was.
Mm.
um I would have liked something like that, and I feel like that was a dangling thread that could have started to mesh the theme better a little bit more.
Mm. Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree that it might have meshed the theme better. I think my take on it is that, and this isn't even to argue or anything. It's just like, I saw it as, um, the High Evolutionary had succeeded in making a creation that was in some sense greater than himself, but he didn't understand how he did it, and that drove
Mhm.
him even crazier than he already was, because it's like, and maybe it was just random, right? Like, sometimes your kid is smarter than you, and it's not, you didn't do anything. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And that's and that means that he can't take credit for the success, right? So and that's why he desperately wanted that's why his objective was, I got to get Rocket's brain, I got to kill him and dissect him and take his brain so I can figure it out, and then it'll be my success and not his success. um
Yeah. Yeah.
but I hear what you're saying, that like, it doesn't quite, it feels more plotty than it does feel dramatic.
Yeah. I mean, and that's like I I'm just trying to tie like the idea of family back together and found family, because like that is something that Rocket has in common in both of his found families, right? He has the group of animals that were all locked together and shared that moment in that cage, and then he eventually found the Guardians as well. And so the thing that makes Rocket different and unique, um, from the Evolutionary is that family, and he is a good dad. He was a good dad to Groot. That makes him different and special and better.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is, I don't know, tangent, but like, I never cared much about Rocket in the first or second movies. I cared more about Rocket in Infinity War, actually, when he's sort of being Thor's therapist, and then he gets really sidelined in Endgame.
Yeah.
And then he kind of, it almost took me by surprise that I cared this much in this movie. And it's like, well, yeah, this movie really makes sure that you care about Rocket.
I kind of wish we knew about Rocket's past before Infinity War, because it would make him losing everyone, because the same thing happened in Infinity War, right? He lost his entire family. He lost everyone. And like, you know, in retrospect, that makes that loss for him so much more emotional and devastating. And
I think I agree, because I never got Rocket's deal. Like, that was why I think I had a hard time connecting, is I was like, okay, he's really messed up about the fact that he's a bionic raccoon, because he was tortured. Like, is that the long and short of it? Is it because he was horribly tortured? And it's like, no, that's actually probably a smaller part of the answer. The main part of the answer is this terrible loss that he suffered.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, I totally agree that it would have made a lot more sense to, I don't know, man. Like, I agree with you, and yet I can't help but feel that in the alternate universe where that had happened, it would have just been like what does that scene look like exactly? You know?
No, I understand. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like the other, I want to move on to the things I absolutely love about this movie here in a bit, because we've been talking for a bit. But the other thing that kind of bugged me, you know, again, it's this moment that plays as this culmination, but I didn't feel like it was earned. Was when, you know, when the high evolutionary is like losing his shit at him, and he says his name, like the number, right, and he says the name's Rocket Raccoon, and it's like the first time he's referred to himself as a raccoon, and that is played as this moment of, I guess, self-acceptance, right? That's what it's going for. That, like, you know, several beats throughout this movie, someone called him a raccoon, and he would clap back, I'm not a raccoon. And so this is a moment at the end of the movie, he's accepting what he is. He's a raccoon. I guess my complaint here is, in the context of everything he's gone through, I don't understand emotionally why he had such a problem with being referred to in that way, and what that has to do with what he went through and what happened with his friends and all that stuff. I guess I just don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I'm in the position of having my own thoughts on the matter, but I don't think that they're dramatized. So like, he resents his whole sort of past of being this, you know, animal who was uplifted by this monster, which implies that he owes sort of his nature and what he is to this monster. And the idea that he's a raccoon, that he's just this animal, is hurtful and angering to him, because his main reaction when people call him raccoon or even rabbit, which is a joke, but he's still angry when people call him animal names, even though he is an animal, is because he can't accept that he is an animal. And it's like that, it really is just like you said. I think it's just he's accepting, like, okay, yeah, this is where I come from. I come from a lab, and I was one of these sad little baby puppy raccoons, and it's really hard to admit that, but he's willing to admit it. And again, it's like, none of that is dramatized. It's all, this is all in my head, right? So that's the problem. And it's funny because, like, it's just, I don't know, I guess it's just interesting that I can totally understand all of these things you're saying, and it's just that like my mind was just sort of following. I always knew what I was supposed to care about in this movie, and it succeeded in making me care about that thing.
Yeah, I mean, James Gunn is very good at this, and it helps in a movie where you have giant-eyed animals being tortured. Like, it's very easy to endear yourself emotionally to a film that's doing that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's a well-made movie. I really do. James Gunn, really, really, really good at this. I think the reason why I'm kind of searching and picking and prodding at these parts of the plot that in a different movie I might be able to do the same thing you're doing is that I just was not emotionally affected by this movie the way I thought I was going to be. I just didn't care the way I thought I was going to care, and so I'm trying to understand why that could possibly be. And this is kind of what I'm getting at when I start looking at the plot and trying to pick and piece it together. I just feel like there's something missing here, and it really, I just didn't feel like this conflict, this resolution between these two characters, it just didn't work on me the way I thought it was going to.
Yeah. See, and again, I don't know that I really cared much about the resolution. I cared about
That
other.
Rocket's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I cared that Rocket was okay, and that he'd been like, for me, the emotional, like, uh the emotional resolution was like he gets his little dream, or maybe it's heaven. He gets to say goodbye to his friends in the spirit realm,
Hmm.
um and then he is back with his new family, and that's what actually matters. Oh, okay, and now bonus, he gets to go stop the guy who did this to them in the first place. But that to me was just a bonus. That wasn't
Then they
really
get
what
to
I cared about.
dance.
They
Yeah.
get to dance.
And he gets to be the
um,
new leader of the Guardians.
yeah,
And
I
then
mean
they go
that.
kill a bunch of animals,
And
which um
yeah, okay, so like that was one thing that I was thinking about during the movie, is that the hallway fight, which I agree, it's like a really cool fight, although it is past the 2 hour mark, which means I was ready for the movie to be over. But notwithstanding, the hallway fight was very cool. But the enemies in the hallway fight are these horribly butchered cyborg animals, who, for all we know, were just like one row of cages over from Rocket when he
uh-huh.
was. And it's like, what are we doing with this? What is this?
The movie does a very bad job of dealing with that central premise. Like in many ways you could give an argument that this is a movie about animal rights, right? This is like there are several moments throughout the movie. I think someone specifically says, "Make sure you save all the higher life forms," right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, that's going to come back. We're not just going to lay that down and not pick it up again." And of course we do, and it becomes Rocket's big thing to save all the other animals, which I think is a great moment. I really like that moment. I really like the moment where he opens the raccoon cage and takes all the baby raccoons out. I think that's great. But then yeah, like the post-credit sequence is like they give lip service to it, which makes it even weirder,
Yeah.
because I think it's like Adam Warlock, who, by the way, haven't talked about that guy yet. Oh boy. Adam Warlock like says like, "Hey, doesn't it bother you that these are just like animals?" And or something to that effect. And Rocket's like, "Yeah. Anyway." And then they just murder them all. And you're like, I don't understand. I mean, that's this movie has a really weird thing with violence. I think that's really interesting because James Gunn has always been a very violent filmmaker. Like he likes violent, like bloody, gory movies. This is a very and the Guardians of the Galaxy movies have always followed this trend, right? Like the Guardians have always been kind of anti-heroes in that they're willing to kill people to accomplish their goals. I mean, like Groot brutally murdered people in both previous movies.
Uh-huh.
You had the whole scene
Yeah.
with Yondu and the arrow that just like kills everyone.
Yeah.
And then you have the sequence about midway through the movie where, in order to differentiate between Gamora and the Guardians, Peter Quill is going on at her about how like, we don't kill people. That's not who we are. That's not what we do. And then like 5 minutes after that, there's this wonderfully like upbeat action sequence that the movie's having great fun with, in which they definitely murder a shit ton of random mooks that work for the bad guy.
Yeah, remember when Groot pulls the guns out of his torso and just mows down the entire room full of like scientists?
Yeah, those were people in lab coats.
Yeah, which
they weren't even trying to kill them.
And they probably deserved it, but
Yeah.
your point is taken that the Guardians definitely don't hesitate from killing people.
Yeah, I mean, so embrace that. Like, don't try to lampshade it or anything like with this thing where Peter Quill's telling off Gamora, and I mean, and that feels like just a moment of we need to really define what the difference between Quill and this version of Gamora is, right? We really have to establish this, and so we're going to make her just be more brutish and violent than they are. But it's like that's what the Guardians are. They are like that. They've always been like that. Like,
Yeah. I don't know, but it's almost like that was all played for a joke because one of the biggest
Possibly.
laughs that the movie got from me was at some point when Peter has just given some lengthy speech about like doing things, with a lighter touch, and they get into the control room, and Gamora like immediately shoots some technician in the leg, and the woman like falls and like screams, blood curdling scream, and like the camera makes sure to like show her like with like blood coming out of her leg, and it's and Gamora is just like screaming at her like furiously, and it's just this like perfect like contrast that I thought was just so funny, and I'm pretty sure I was the only person in the theater laughing, but I thought it was amazing.
I thought that was very funny too. It was really good.
I noticed there were a lot of jokes in the movie where I was the only person in the theater laughing, where I was like, "What's going on with that? Are these people just dumb? I don't know. I don't understand." It was a packed theater. Anyway,
I think I've read a lot of people were very traumatized by this
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
Like a lot of people, like the animal violence portion of this movie, like really pulled them out of it to the
Hmm.
point where they were just not enjoying anything anymore. And maybe it's as simple as that, right?
Maybe.
I don't know.
maybe yeah. Let's talk about the ultra violence of it all for a bit longer. I mean, you did just
Sure.
mention it, but yeah. So like I was a little I was tugging my collar when Adam Warlock is walking around holding onto this decapitated pig head, and you've got like the like graphic brutal violence of like cutting people to pieces with knives, and
Yeah.
and what was the like the repeated cloning a creature in a tube, and then the Ninja Turtle the first time, and the Ninja Turtle
Uh-huh.
like roars at us terrifyingly, and then they incinerate it, and then they blew up the planet full of poor bunnies, which I guess that wasn't necessarily graphic violence, but to me that was like the most disturbing thing that happened in the movie, was just this planet of poor animal creatures that are living in the 1950s,
Yeah.
and then they're all just killed for,
Just all of, like, we assume, they call it, what is it? Alter Earth or something? I forget what it's called.
Counter Earth, I think.
Counter Earth, yeah. So we assume it's got like a full planet-sized population of people that are
Yeah.
all just dead now.
I found that like super disturbing in a sort of elevated science fiction way of just like,
Yeah.
oh my god, like I feel ill.
Yeah, this is hard PG-13. Like,
yeah.
like I there are moments where I'm surprised Gunn won the battle to get the PG-13 rating. I mean, there are moments of it that's great. Like the first fuck in the MCU was one of the best jokes
It was
in
good.
the movie.
It was very good. Yeah.
Open the fucking door.
Yeah.
I laughed so hard. And actually I looked this up because I was really curious about this, and apparently that was an ad lib on scene, and James Gunn was so in love with it, and he was like, "There's no way Kevin Feige lets me do this. There's absolutely no way." And so he went to Feige, and he was like, "Well, what about the F-bomb, Kevin?" And he's like, "Well, in Endgame, the Russo brothers had one in the script early, but they ended up deciding that it wasn't the thing that they wanted to be remembered for, so they took it out.
Uh-huh.
So if it's the thing you, James Gunn, want to be remembered for." And Gunn said, "Kevin, you think you're talking me out of it, but you're actually just talking me into it more."
Oh my god.
And so that's why the F-bomb is in there, but it's great. But yeah, I mean, like, the violence is not just like the depiction of violence on the screen, but yeah, like the trauma of these animals being tortured, the hundreds and millions of people being killed. Yeah, it's if I had my kids there, I would be a little like, "Ugh, are they going to be okay with this?"
Yeah. I was surprised that they were totally fine with it, but I guess I'm glad, since I've gradually worked them up to tolerating really high levels of violence. Yeah, that's right, Father of the Year. But yeah, it didn't seem to bother them. I think it was interesting. The youngest, she only said she was scared at one point, and it was like a thing that I wouldn't have even thought was scary at all. Like, it wasn't any of the things I just mentioned. It was can't even remember it because it didn't stick in my mind at all. It was like it was just
Hmm.
some specific moment um that scared her for some reason. That, you know, I remember being a kid and being scared by things that kind of make no sense in retrospect. So it's
Yeah.
just, the surprise is actually that the stuff that I thought was quite, you know, when the Ninja Turtle like roars at I was like, I like started, you know, it was
Yeah.
like, it actually got me. So that apparently was fine. And, you know, and instant the movie was over, she like gets up from her seat, walks over to me, and says like, I have a lot of favorite parts, and I want to tell you all of them. And I'm like, okay, good, this movie worked.
Yeah.
Um,
That's great. That makes me happy.
but yeah, that it's very God, just very interesting. Very I guess like so you said the movie didn't really work for you emotionally, and that's, you know, you've explained yourself. It's fair. I'm not going to argue with you. I just want to say like that the whole backstory of Rocket, it was like it was like a perfect, it was like the beginning of Pixar's Up, where it's just like perfect economical storytelling, building inexorably towards something that you know is going to happen, because you know all these little animal friends are not going to make it. You're just not sure how. And so there's this building dread in concert with this like just sort of happiness that at least they were able to be there for each other in these dark times. And then the ending of it, the way, you know, the way the flashback sequences end is just so perfect. It's just, it is. It's just perfect to me. Like in its horror, in its unflinching horror, actually. And that's what I most appreciated about the movie.
Yeah, I think that's the exception that makes the rule for me, because I genuinely agree that that stuff is great. Like when the like I'm pretty sure Gunn like turned up the mix on the gunshot that kills
Mhm.
Lila, because it's so loud, right? And
Mhm.
like it that's one of the things that made me jump, is, you know, they're in this moment and then bam, and it's just so loud and she falls over, and that was devastating. Absolutely, that stuff worked. You know, that is the emotional part of the movie that worked on me, for sure. And then I think, as you said, you know, once Rocket wakes up, everything just gets messy from there. But
Mhm.
all that stuff I thought was great. I love those characters. I think they were well defined and sweet, and you're legitimately devastated when they all horribly die, for sure.
Another moment that really worked on me, almost at the same level of impacting me emotionally, was the simple the simple moment after Rocket has been saved, and they're talking to I guess Nebula. They're talking to each other on the comms, and it's kind of bantery because they're like, "What? You're on the ship? No, we went this way, you went that way," and it's all, you know, it's all Three Stooges. And then Rocket says something, and then everyone is silent, because this is the first time that the people on the ship are realizing that Rocket is alive, and you see Nebula's reaction to it.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's always what gets me, is like the dramatization of it, seeing the character actually react to learning that the
Yeah.
person that they care about is still alive, and Nebula like chokes up, and it's just like, oh, like that got me. I felt that vicarious emotion from Nebula really
and
strongly.
and and that feels like a James Gunn thing to me, for sure. That he's like always aware of those moments and always like allows those moments to play out in these ridiculous scenes that are just, you know, going for joke, and then realize that, oh, like at some point in the script writing process, there's probably like, oh, and then Rocket talks, and, you know, maybe some other writer would just move on past that, but
Yeah,
in this movie they're like, oh wait, this is the first time Rocket's talking, so we need to have the characters stop and recognize that he's awake,
right.
um, and allow them, you know, we the viewer have already had the emotion of him getting up, but allow them that emotion as well.
I mean, my guess as to the way James Gunn breaks the story is that he builds the skeleton out of dramatic moments like what you just kind of described, and then he stitches in the jokes and the funny and the whimsy. But the level of consistency of actually nailing those dramatic beats tells me that um he must be taking that really seriously, because that's what's missing from, literally all of the MCU movies since Endgame, as we discussed, and honestly many of the MCU movies prior to it. I
Mhm.
think that they just don't care to make you really feel anything that strongly, except maybe like a good hoorah, at the end when somebody gets their ass kicked by the hero.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. For the most part.
For the most part, right? I mean, there's exceptions. I just watched Iron Man 1 the other day because I was like, I was like, the honest reason why is this movie made me remember what I liked about the MCU, which is a weird thing to say, but like came home from this movie and I was like, oh yeah, I do like the Marvel movies. I've just been sick of them lately, and I've watched so many bad ones in a row that I was honestly like, do I even like I remember liking it, but I don't like it right now. What is? And it's like, oh yeah, I just happened to like the last three that I watched were bad, and then I watched Iron Man 1, and that's great. It does everything right in the way that this movie does, where it's just like simple, correct storytelling and dramatic moments that are
Yeah, I mean, this is
landed.
actually like why this annoyed me so much, because like again I look at all these elements, I look at all these things, and I look at this and I say I am mad at myself that I didn't like this movie more, because it has basically everything I've been asking for these movies to have since Endgame. It has, smaller personal stakes, it has good character moments, it has um no, not like slave to the connection to the ongoing MCU. It has all these things, and it's like that. I want to love it, and I didn't, and
Mhm.
that's kind of where I'm at this place where I feel myself being nitpicky and an asshole, frankly, and I don't like it, but I also like can't pretend that the movie worked on me because it just didn't.
Yeah, I really don't think you're being an asshole, but I mean, I understand, the frustration when you're like, I wish it had worked on me,
Hmm.
I think it basically did. I still think the movie was too long, and that they really almost can't keep doing this. Like, like it's really a problem to go see a 2.5 hour movie. Like the odds that one of you or your family are going to have to go to the bathroom, it messes up, like it is literally hard to plan your day around the 2.5 hour movie.
Hmm.
Am I
Yeah.
crazy here? Like it's just like,
No,
please stop doing it.
I mean, I saw John Wick 4 the other day. And that's a 3-hour movie,
Hmm.
and that's like the whole last hour I'm like, we don't need to do this.
Yeah,
Like I get it, he's like really good at beating people up, and I overall enjoyed that movie too. um there's a literal moment, Matt, where he's climbing up some stairs in is it Paris? I think it's in Paris. Yeah, he's climbing up some stairs in Paris, and he climbs up this long set of stairs leading to a church, and he almost gets to the top, and then someone kicks him, and he rolls all the way down the stairs, and then he climbs all the way back up the stairs fighting more people again, and I'm just like, oh my god, what are we doing? Like I get it. um and that's in many ways like part of what I felt about this movie, that there's a lot of stuff I enjoyed, but a lot of stuff was like, okay, I get it, I
yeah,
get it. We don't need, and like that's, I think Adam Warlock is this character in this movie that I just think you could completely cut out of it entirely, and everything that you and I have been talking about would still function exactly the same way.
yeah,
Um, like, and here's the frustrating thing about this is I thought he was hilarious. I thought Will Poulter did a really good job with this character. I enjoyed every scene he was in, but I also don't think he's relevant to anything the movie's doing, really.
I mean, the only way he's relevant is that we have yet again, the child of the bad dad, right? And his mom is the other figure. I forget her name. So it's all kind of painting with the same colors, but to what end?
Yeah, I just didn't think that. I didn't think we needed more of that. in this particular story. And
Yeah, yeah.
I like it's such an interesting choice too, because like, so we had, these characters at the end of Guardians 2 that were really pissed off at Rocket and the Guardians for stealing the batteries. They chase after them. And that's like one of the main things that lends to them discovering ego, and that it's kind of the thing that jump starts that movie, right? Their conflict with the Sovereign, I think they're called.
I totally forgot the entire plot of that movie, to be honest.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
so
okay.
the like ending of the scene, the post-credit sequence, and that is the creation of Adam Warlock, who I guess is supposed to be like their best. I still don't really understand who Adam Warlock is, other than like he's one of those Sovereign people, but like really good actually. And
Uh-huh.
also they let him out too early, so he's like a little baby, which is pretty funny.
Well,
Um,
the other thing is like my oldest was like, "Is this like a new Vision?" And I'm like, "Well,
yeah, he looks a lot like
he
Vision,
has
doesn't
the
he?
stone in his forehead. Like, what
Yeah.
are we?" And it turns out, by the way, that in the comics, Adam Warlock does have the Soul Stone. So I guess they just decided to just keep the
The rocket is
the rock in his head and just have that be
yeah.
whatever.
And so like it feels to me like they set this thing up in Guardians 2 that Adam Warlock was coming, and like James Gunn and the rest of the cast basically know this is it for them, and so they have to bring Adam Warlock into this thing, but they have this other idea with Rocket and the High Evolutionary, and they really want to explore that story, but we have this Adam Warlock thing. What do we do? I don't know what to do. And the thing to do was so weird to me, because the Sovereign already have a reason to hate Rocket and to want to get Rocket. And then in this movie it says, actually the Sovereign are just created by this guy, and they're just, goons that are going to come get him and bring him back to them. And I was just like, I don't think we needed another reason. Like it's just like you can kind of see where they're trying to take these two different ideas and sew them together in a way that just makes like a weird pig monster.
Yeah, I agree that the insertion of Adam Warlock into this story was, I mean, it was the one part of the movie that made me really think like, I guess this was their quota of
Yeah.
gotta shove one other MCU thing in here that's probably going to continue on and be a thing, because but why though? Who cares about Adam Warlock? Like I don't know. Maybe we'll never see him again. Who knows?
I think we might not. Like I don't know. The post credits thing said Star-Lord will return, right? It didn't say the Guardians of the Galaxy will return.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of love the idea of leaving Rocket and the rest of that group there doing their own thing, and then not telling those stories anymore. I'm cool leaving all those people where they're at. So that would be absolutely fine with me. But I have a suspicion that you can't do that in this world that we live in, and so we'll come back to that eventually. But yeah, I don't know. Like that's the thing, is I thought he was funny. Like it's weird to say like you can cut this entire thing out of the movie when I enjoyed a lot of the thing. Like as much as I thought the continued we're gonna have Peter Quill almost die in the vacuum of space joke that we do every single one of these movies,
right?
Like him doing the Sistine Chapel pose with Quill was fucking hilarious. That was really funny.
It was, but I could have done without it entirely. There was no need for Quill to do the vacuum thing again. That was that I was literally like, I don't care. Fine, Quill can die for all I care. I'm done with the movie. I want it to be over now.
Yeah, I mean the most that I cared, I guess, was that I was genuinely curious if they were going to actually kill Quill, because I guess like I don't know, I think the marketing did this thing in this movie where it really kind of made you think, oh, a lot of these characters aren't going to make it out of this movie, right? And I think that was intentional. I think they wanted you to do that, so you go, oh, I got to see which of the Guardians is going to die. And I mean, one of the things is they like I think that a lot of the marketing played up the limited lifespan thing, like which is a line that Rocket says in the very beginning. I was like, oh, is this going to be the Rocket dies movie? And then like it was about halfway through where I was like, oh, Rocket can't die in this movie. They can't spend 3/4 of the movie trying to get him to live, and then he wakes up and then dies. Like so yeah, when Quill did that, I was like, are we gonna actually kill, like is the 3-beat here that this is the time he actually dies? No, the 3-beat here is that this time his face gets all puffy and then he's saved anyway.
Yeah. You got to take some things out though. Got to kill your darlings. I think that was my first thought coming out of the movie. Actually, was like this. This is a textbook example of like, please. I know it's hard. You got to kill some of these darlings.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too much. It's just too much in here.
We've been going for a while. Let's talk about some of the awesome things that are in this movie.
Uh-huh.
The practical effects, the mixture of CGI and practical, all of the incredibly wonderful design ideas. The meat spaceport is like I'm so glad this thing's in this movie.
Yeah, me too.
It's so disgusting and wonderful. I love
Yeah.
it. Like the shock trooper guards wearing like these
Yeah.
huge like skin suits. Oh, it's God. I love James Gunn. He's so weird.
Nathan Fillion in his giant meat muscle suit, whatever it is. It makes him kind of look like a tardigrade. It's so weird. It reminds me of Meow Wolf. I think I might have said this before,
Mm-hmm.
where it's just like delightful weirdness and done just beautifully and unapologetically, and just the kind of thing that you don't see much of, right? Like you don't see much like real kind of risk-taking creativity.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that we have all of the technology in the world and we could have any images, you could do anything, right? And yet we seem to often choose to just do the same thing. Do Star Wars again, more or less. And this movie did not do that. This movie was very, very fun. I mean, even the idea of the planet full of the planet that was a mirror of the 1950s, the aesthetic choices of contrasting that, juxtaposing that with the animal heads was super unnerving in like a Twilight Zone kind of way, where you're just like, I was like honestly like weirded out by it,
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was like too old for that particular emotion, honestly, but I was like uncomfortable with like the idea of this. I thought it was great. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and this is like, this is where I want to kind of differentiate like the quibbling and the critiquing I've been doing over the course of this movie and stuff I consider stupid, because I've seen things that are like, because the idea that this planet is set up to look exactly like Earth in every single possible way except their heads are animals
Mm-hmm.
is hilarious. Like they have all the same cars, all the same buildings, but also dog head. Like
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't make any logical sense actually, but it works and is totally effective. And to critique that is stupid. Just like this idea, like I read something that was like, actually, meat is the worst thing to build in space because it turns out meat doesn't live in the vacuum of space. Shut up. It's hilarious.
Yeah. No, it causes me physical pain to hear that critique because I'm like it. And anyway, it's like, okay, but like you could probably engineer some kind of meat that would stand up against vacuum, but I don't even want to have this conversation. Just shut up. Like it's fine.
Yeah, it's just a fun, kooky, weird idea, and this is, I think, the movie at its best. Absolutely, is doing these things like that. That entire sequence on the meat space station was some of my favorite in the movie. Like, there's so many beats in there that just work really, really well.
Yeah,
I loved Mantis throwing all the suits out the bay.
Yeah. The Among Us uniforms.
Yeah.
Yeah,
people are saying that's supposed to be Among Us. I'm pretty sure that's a reference to something else.
Is it? It looked like the Among Us sort of helmets to me. That's why I said it was Among Us, but possible. I thought it was supposed to be Among Us because you wear.
No, I've seen that echoed elsewhere. Yeah.
I mean, I liked all of the like comedy. Like I liked when they're sitting on the surface trying to cut their way in, and Quill, thinks he's having this heart-to-heart with Gamora, and then they're like, "We can all hear you," and it's just
and the explanation
great.
about the buttons and which one does what, that was great stuff. Like that's I think I keep repeating myself, and it's because what I want to make clear here is that like I don't think this movie worked overall, but like the individual moments of it for me were just absolutely wonderful. And that's one of them. Like the humor here is really, really good.
Yeah.
Like consistently good.
Yeah, I don't think there was a time that they went for a joke that I didn't at least smile or chuckle,
Mm-hmm.
which is not something I think I can say about all MCU movies. Sometimes I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
that was
I
stupid.
mean, it's very much James Gunn, and I think this is the thing that I think is the most interesting thing about this movie, and again, why I wanted to love it so much more than I did, is because so much of MCU directing, I feel like, has become directing by committee, where you hire the director to like do the thing that they know how to do, and then they're like, well, I'm a director that directs like incredibly personal, intense character dramas. I don't know how to do any of the action shit. And Marvel goes, "Don't worry, we've got someone that's going to do all that for you." And it makes it a movie that doesn't really feel like it belongs to any specific person, right? I think the best example of this is the Eternals, which is a bad movie. It's a very, very bad movie. And Chloe Zhao, who directed it, an Oscar award winning director, is someone that I like quite a bit. She's very good at what she does. Nomadland was a movie I liked a whole bunch, but it didn't even really feel like her movie.
No.
And the thing about this movie, and the thing that's always been true about the Guardians, is to me they've always been James Gunn movies first and Marvel movies second.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why they work as well as they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I wish they would learn from this. That
Yeah.
they should let people be creative, and sometimes they do let that happen, and it's great, and it
Yeah.
always works.
But it feels to me like the end of that, like he's done now. He's got a big job at Warner Brothers DC. He's going to be making movies over there for the foreseeable future. He is writing and directing the next Superman movie, which I'm really excited about, actually. It's going to be very different from, I think, a lot of Superman stories, because it's just James Gunn. Like, there's no way he's going to make a traditional Superman story. And I'm really interested to see what he has there. But like, what is coming on the horizon for Marvel that like is of a piece with this?
I don't know. I mean,
Have you seen the trailer for the Marvels? Did they play that when you
yes,
watched this?
yes, they did.
It did not look good. That's a bad trailer.
No, it doesn't. I mean, okay, so like my oldest, her favorite character has always been Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
So she's really excited about that, and like I get it, but I'm not particularly. I mean, I'm sure we'll go see it. I I don't know, man. Like I always just got to go back to Andor, where I'm like, oh my god, that sounds so stupid. Can you believe it, Scott? They're gonna make a TV show based on a secondary character from the worst Star Wars movie, and then it's my favorite thing ever. So it's like, look, they're gonna keep trying things. Maybe they're gonna become a little bit more experimental in some ways, and then maybe some of these things I'll end up just absolutely loving, and then maybe some of them will be, they'll probably keep making the committee produced sort of standard Marvel product. They'll probably keep doing that, but then every once in a while, on the edges, you'll get some weird little miracle that you appreciate. And I think I'd be kind of content with that. Obviously, it's not the best case, but I'd be okay with it.
No, that's a very optimistic, positive outlook. I thank you for that. I agree. I think we should try to, the great art can exist in this kind of thing, and it's very possible we'll get it again. I do wonder, like, I don't want to go down the road of the doom and gloom, like, is this the end for the MCU? But I do think it's interesting looking at this movie money wise for a bit here. So this movie opened last weekend, right? It opened at let's see if I can find it. $118 million, which is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. It's less than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 made, though, by about 30 million. And I think most importantly, it's less than like Doctor Strange made by 70 million. And that's Doctor Strange. So it's surprising to me, I guess. This movie's going to do very well. It's probably going to cross $1 billion. The Marvel is not going anywhere. But to me, this seems like we're on the downward trend, right? Like you can make some arguments that like, oh, Marvel's been in a bit of a slump, but they've had all these movies that like their new characters really aren't clicking with people, and they're testing things. And I think we've called it like the college phase of the MCU, right? They're trying new things. They're trying to figure out who they are now. But this was, to me, like the one pillar left of the old guard of the pre Endgame group, and it's not doing as well as it failed to meet projections. It did not do as well as everyone was thinking it was going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I got my own little internal projection in my brain, and it seems like the number is lower than I would have thought it would be by now, especially at the $250 million budget. Like they clearly thought this one was going to rake it in.
Yeah, I did too. I thought this was going to be the biggest movie of the year, and Mario is beating the shit out of it.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, it's I don't know what my point is here exactly, other than like we James Gunn, we had this movie, we had Taika Waititi do Love and Thunder, and that definitely didn't feel like a movie made by committee. So 2 out of the last handful of these movies have actually been these weird kind of mannered, in a certain sense, weirdo Marvel movies. I mean, maybe people just want standardized Marvel product. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like how did Ant-Man do financially?
But very bad.
Okay, well, then maybe they don't want standardized Marvel product. Maybe they're just kind of burned out. There's been a lot of
Ant-Man
these.
and the Wasp: Quantumania made 106.
Yeah, that's
opening
horrible.
weekend.
Yeah, I mean,
Thor: Love and Thunder made 144, by the way. So Guardians lost to Thor, which
Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting. It's weird. Yeah. I don't know quite what to make of it. And it could just be, it could be a combination of things. It could just be, the pandemic trained people to not go to the theaters as much, but that's not entirely true, right? Because, we've learned that if something gets people excited enough, they will come out in droves for it. I feel like I guess that this is anecdotal, certainly, but I feel like when I talk to people that have been Marvel fans for a long time, and people that should be really into this kind of stuff, they're kind of indifferent to it all now. It's like, hey, have you seen the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie yet? No.
Yeah.
Like our Discord, no, I've not seen anyone talk about it at all. Like 0 people have said a word about this movie.
True. Yeah.
And again, that's anecdotal, certainly, but these are the type of people you would think would be really into this kind of stuff and seem pretty indifferent to it.
Yeah, I don't know what to read into this. I'll say that I've seen more movies this summer than I've seen in many years. But I don't know if I can read anything to that, though. I think that's just like, well, yeah, that's because my kids are finally old enough that I can take all of them to a PG-13 movie and not have that turn into a disaster.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. We have a few more this year, as we said. We have the Marvels, which I just don't think is going to do very well at all. I do not have high hopes for that one. I liked Captain Marvel way more than you did. I enjoyed that movie. I like Brie Larson a lot. It's a bad trailer. Like the movie could be great. The trailer is not good. So I think that's going to hurt it.
I saw a couple different trailers. One of them looked more compelling than the other because it just looked more fun. One of the trailers was really bad and made me not want to watch the movie. So
I forget what else is coming out this year for Marvel. I know there's something else, but
yeah, that's I don't remember.
I don't know. We'll see. We will see. But for now, we will say farewell to the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to say?
Not about the movie, but just like it's been a really long time since I saw all the trailers and was like, that looks good. That looks cool. I want to see that. That happened this time. Like every trailer before this movie, pretty much, I was like, oh, cool.
What trailers were those? Tell me.
Dune.
Well, yeah.
Oppenheimer. The trailer for the Marvels that I saw before this movie was good actually. I'd seen, like I said, there's 2 trailers. I know there was something else, but I've forgotten now. Those are the 3 obvious ones. But I mean, even my kids were like, "This Oppenheimer movie looks really good. Why does it look so good?" I was like, "'Cause it's Christopher Nolan, children."
Yeah, we've talked a lot about my feelings on Christopher Nolan, but I am optimistic about that movie. I think that was a very, very good trailer.
Yeah.
I think I think it's really interesting. I'm very curious about what Oppenheimer is going to be saying, because like I feel like it has to be more complex than just, hey, this was a bad idea, this thing we did. Because I feel like that's been the cultural conversation, like literally since the Manhattan Project, is we've been having that conversation specifically, that this was a bad thing we did, and like we created this thing, and now we have to live with the consequences of that for the rest of forever. I trust Nolan to try to dive into the complexities of this whole thing and really try to find something new and interesting to say about it.
Yeah,
But I
I
don't know.
mean, I guess I'm just thinking more along the lines of, I don't know, the spectacle of it. But
Sure.
I think Nolan's particular bee in his bonnet is like, as seriously as you people are taking this, you're not taking it nearly seriously enough. And which is almost certainly true, just objectively speaking. So maybe
Yeah,
it'll
I guess from a pure like historical perspective, I don't know that much about the Manhattan Project, actually, outside of, the major players and what they did. Like
yeah.
I don't know a lot of the details of it. So I guess from that perspective, like this could be very informative for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I've read a couple of books that touched on it tangentially, but I'm sure there's stuff in the trailer where I'm like, is that true? Like, did it happen this way? I assume it is true, because I feel like Nolan would care about that kind of detail. But we'll see. I guess we'll figure it
Hey,
out.
who do you think Emily Blunt plays in this movie?
I'm sure I don't know.
Do you think she plays a wife that the movie treats like shit?
Is she gonna die? Is she gonna be killed to make the main character have the resolution to create the atomic bomb?
Christopher Nolan cannot put a woman in a movie without having her be like a forlorn or dead or
Maybe
angry
she'll
wife.
Yeah, maybe she'll be like you know, the antagonist of the third Batman movie. Maybe that's what she'll be.
Oh my god. Okay, yeah, I think maybe the other movie you saw probably was Across the Spider-Verse. Was the
Yeah,
Spider-Man
that's
one?
probably one of them.
That's
I
what
know
I
there was
saw.
at least one other thing that I hadn't seen, but I'm not going to remember it. So never mind.
It's a very stacked summer. There's a lot of movies. It's going to be really interesting. Some of them make me sad, like the Flash movie. Just makes me sad every time I see that trailer. But I'm excited about Oppenheimer. I do not love Christopher Nolan, but I think one thing is for sure: this is going to be a very, very good looking, well shot movie.
For sure.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Let's just wrap it up for today. We went really long, so we'll talk about this thing I want you to watch later.
Okay, sounds good.
So that is it. If you have any opinions for us on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which I'm sure you do, unless you haven't seen it, because apparently not too many people did. Relative. I mean, let's be $118 million is still a whole lot of money.
Yeah. At least 118 if you saw it.
Yeah. But yeah, you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or on Twitter @doofmedia.
Yeah, if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe, and that way you'll never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
If you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/Doof Media, and there you can pledge at any level and find a whole bunch of cool bonus features like our show, Other Levels of the Tower, where Matt and I take a look at Stephen King adaptations. This month, we looked at Maximum Overdrive, a movie that is definitely worse than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but I definitely enjoyed more.
Yeah, had a really fun time watching that as well, for sure.
Uh-huh.
Also, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, that is it for us this week. I don't know what we're doing next week, Matt. I have no idea. We have to get our shit together.
We'll do that. We'll get it together.
We will. So next week, we'll get our shit together. We'll see you then.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.